may have heard the saying that your 30s feel better than your late 20s, and there is an astrological reason for that. There is a timing technique used in astrology called perfection years, which means that each year of your life from like your birthday is activating one of these houses in your chart. And it starts from the moment you were born. So from age 0, you're activating your first house. From age 1, that's your second house. 2 is your third, and so forth, and it continues over and over again. So at age 24, that's a first house year, and that's where a lot of people really start to develop their sense of self, like their first initiation into adulthood, into leaving behind being a teenager, early 20s exploration. There is more of a solidification of the self, age 24, and that continues from 25 and even to your 26, where you're getting clear on your money and also your environment and who you're living with and everything of that nature. Age 27 is when you enter into the fourth house year, and this also sparks a series of all these different transits lining up. That is like the big initiation into official adulthood. And you may have heard of the 27 Club for celebrities, because age 27 is really where you get all the heavy astrological transits into your chart, building up to your Saturn return. And so those next 3 years, 27, 28, and 29, are some of the hardest years to go through, especially as you've never experienced some of these transits before. But also, just looking at this technique, the houses 4, 5th, and 6 are harder houses to deal with. They are looking at things from under the visibility. So you are under the horizon. This is our horizon, the 1st and 7th. And when we're under the horizon, we're really not visible to a lot of the world. We're dealing with shit that is very personal. With your 4th house year, it's often your home life, your family, and what that feels like, what that looks like. Your 5th house is you're trying to have fun again, you're trying to create, or maybe you're having children or dealing with those issues more. And it's, again, very personal self-expression tools. And then that 6th house at 29 is really about your body, your health, work routines, dealing with being of service and managing your time and avoiding burnout. And those things are harder, and they're also just things that are just don't feel so visible in your life. But when you turn 30 is when you finally cross over the threshold into the ascendant, to the horizon, and this is your 7th house year, which is really focusing onto relationships and partnerships. But that's when you start to become more visible. Now, this half of the chart is often about other people or other things in your life. So you're still dealing with others and establishing yourself again, but you're now seen. It's now becoming louder. You're now feeling like you're coming out from the underworld into reality again, into life again, and able to kind of deal with things more constructively and show up instead of just kind of fighting personal battles. Of course, this really varies from chart to chart. And you know, your 8th house year at 31 is generally a challenging year too, because that's still a challenging house. And it depends, of course, what these houses are, what planets rule these houses for you, and all of that to really determine the quality. But for the most part, moving away from these houses into the upper part of your chart always feels sort of like a rebirth, a coming together. And it's fitting because around 30, 31 is when you wrap up your Saturn return. By the time you're 32, you're in this entirely new world, and you get to really start to shape it with more power and more control. Even look at this in terms of Lana Del Rae's chart. She became really popular in these early degrees in her early years into her 20s. And to this part of her later 20s is when she was releasing Ultraviolence. And you know, if you know that album, it's a very dark, melancholy album about kind of deeper, harsher, critical, abusive relationships. And that kind of really was this darker period of her music. When she hit her 30 into 31, she eventually broke up or divorced I don't even know if they were married. I think they just broke up. And that was the person that basically inspired all of Ultraviolence until she hit about her 9th house year, which is when NFR came out, which is arguably her most popular and successful album. But she did go through this journey of like really dealing with the deeper depression, the deeper emotions, the darker music, until she became sort of reborn again and had an entirely different musical style that was more of herself. If you're in your 30s, I want to hear what you think about this. How does this felt for you? How has this showed up? And what have you learned about going through your Saturn return?